What up, Long Beach? Welcome back to another episode of LBST, where we are thankful for everything Long Beach Athletics, because that's pretty much just what we do. As always, I am co-sports editor JJ Fiddler, to my right.
Co-sports editor Mike Gardabasio, and to my right, someone doing a Tyler Hendrickson impersonation.
I'm trying my best. Chris Rubino here. So that means the job of thanking our sponsors falls to me, Naples Rib Company, and Papalucci's. They put the E in 2nd Street.
You got it.
Nailed it. Like he's been doing it for years.
I was worried he was going to say 2nd Boulevard or something.
No.
There's no time to gild the lily this week. It's all about the ships, Thanksgiving, and semifinal CIF football matchups. St. Anthony and Downey are also playing for a chance to play for it all. But you know what it is. You know where we're going to start. It's Poly. It's St. John Bosco. It's the rematch of the 2012 Fog Bowl. It's the game that every local high school football fan has been waiting for since the final whistle went down on that night.
Oh, yeah. I think it's safe to say that, I know that Bosco fans want a chance at revenge against Poly. I know that the Poly fans are chanting, "We want Bosco" at the end of Poly's game. They started halfway through the fourth quarter in the game against Crespi. So this is definitely, I'd have to say, the most anticipated game we've had. Probably even more than that 2012 semifinal. Maybe, I guess the Poly Modern Day Championship game was pretty certainly looked after in that same way. But this game definitely has that kind of air about it, doesn't it?
Oh, indeed it does. And it's got so much going from that game in 2012 because it was really just everything kind of came together for that game. And then you added the fog at Vets.
And the fact that Poly was wearing gray.
And then, everything just got, it was like something out of a storybook. And I know that sounds like the cliche of all cliches, but it really is true. With the picture that we have on our Facebook account right now, the cover photo is from that game, and it looks like we set it up.
Right.
Like it's something we did for some corny high school football movie we were going to produce.
No, I think even there, we were sort of remarking about that to each other at the time, that it was like, this is it's like a little over the top. You know what I mean?
Bosco fans definitely think it's over the top. Chris, have you heard Bosco fans on social media talking about how the Fog won that game and Poly didn't really?
Or the refs. Yeah.
I mean, yes. It's just one of those things. You're upset when you lose a game like that. You're just trying to look for some blame, but it's what it is. I mean, I don't think it did not have it. I wasn't there, but I'm sure it's just part of the game.
I think it's the fog thing cracks me up because it's like, well, Poly was also playing in the same fog. They didn't have like infrared goggles on in their helmets or something, you know. Like anytime a team says that the weather dictated the result, I always think it's kind of funny because it's like, was it raining harder on your sideline, or you know what I mean? But the other thing you see people bring up a lot is that call, the Juju Smith catch that, you know, people have the video, they say it was an incompletion. That one also kind of cracks me up. And I know if you go to a Poly sideline and you say, hey, what if you could go back with film and correct every bad call in one of your playoff games? I think they'd take that. They'd take that bargain in a heartbeat. They had, for example, 2 fumbles they recovered in the last 2 weeks in the playoffs that we've got pretty clear evidence on video were fumbles that were ruled down. And that's just, it's high school sports. You don't have professional NFL refs out there. That's definitely a part of the game. But to me, it kind of fuels that excitement about this, is that the Bosco fans have that feeling like we didn't get a fair shot at them for whatever reason in 2012. And they feel like this year they're hosting it, no fog in the forecast, that, you know, this year they're going to get a clean shot in their opinion.
It's really interesting in the Pac-5 division. We've been talking about it for a few years now, how the private schools and the public schools seem to meet in these games, and you end up talking about the level playing field between those two. And I can't think of a better 2 schools to represent that emerging rivalry in high school sports, let alone Pac-5 division high school football right now. But you look at Poly, you look at Bosco, proximity rivalry. Obviously, some of the same kids are deciding to go to one school or the other. And like you said, it is
it's a big game for 8th graders.
It's a big game for 8th graders, but like you said, Mike, it does take that extra little oomph because Bosco hasn't beaten Poly. I remember after a state playoff game a few years ago, a few of those Bosco coaches were talking. They're like, you know, one day we're going to get these guys. I mean, they think about it. It's not something they're trying to ignore and, hey, you know, we'll meet Poly when we meet Poly or whatever. No, Bosco was ready for this game before, and that brings me to my next point, which is if I go back before the season and I talk to the two of you who have seen these two teams play more than anybody else, and I say, which of the two of you expects to be in the semifinal? It is really weird to think that the Bosco Braves would be more expecting a semifinal berth than Poly. Obviously, expectations always high.
Right. No, but the media almost unanimously picked against them in the Crespi game, which is a quarterfinal. I mean, NBC, LA Times, a lot of people came out and said, oh, we don't think Poly's going to be able to win that game. Whereas Bosco, even losing as many guys as they did last year would kind of have been the shock of the century if you go 16-0, win a state championship, and then don't get that semifinal berth.
If you had told me they would make it there at 11-1, 5-0 in the Trinity League with all they lost and all those new pieces, I would have been hesitant to agree to that. But they did with that one loss. It's even more impressive, and it's a 3-point loss to the number 1 team in the nation, who's probably going to win the national championship. So, I mean, always talented, and yes, I'm not surprised that they're there. With the record they are, I'm a little bit surprised.
We've got coverage for this matchup all week long, as you may have already seen in the Press Telegram.
Almost too much.
There's never too much high school football playoff coverage, Mike. We've also got it in the Grundy Gazette and also on GazetteSports.com. Breaking down this matchup, there's a million ways we can do it, but let's go ESPN game day, Kirk Herbstreit style, and do 3 stars. Let's bounce it back and forth like we're picking a team in a sandlot. Who's going to be really, really important for these teams tonight? Chris, we'll go to you first. Who's the number 1 star for the Bosco Braves?
I think the number 1 star is the number 1 quarterback in the nation. I think that's the easy one to go. Josh Rosen, just a sophomore in that game, did not have probably his worst statistical game he's had in a Braves.
He was 6 to 21, but it's worth noting, as JJ I think was about to say.
Well, I'm going to drop the Giselle line, dude. He can't catch it too.
Right. He was really probably 16 for 21, but it was 6 for 21 on the stat line because his receivers were 6 for 21 instead of 16 for 21. You know, a lot of drops in that game.
Little alligator arms.
Some alligator arms, and the visibility obviously an issue too. Yeah.
I mean, having another outstanding year, 25 touchdowns against just 2 interceptions.
That's the most impressive stat to me, because he had a propensity to throw balls into coverage last year.
Right.
And he's done an incredible job with almost an entirely new receiving core of not throwing those picks into coverage.
He's adjusted his game this year in a big way, and it's been impressive to watch, because after last year, I think it would have been easy, as just a fan of the game, to look at the kid and go, well, what else would he... what else could he really do? He had more or less a perfect season. And then, to see him adjust to the team he has this year, I think, to be honest, that speaks really highly of his chances of making it the next level and the level after that, to see him make that adjustment. And he's also bulked up. I mean, the kid, you know what I mean? He looks like a college football player now.
And I was going to say, the bulking up, he's making it a little more dangerous in the running game.
Yes,
he's definitely running over some people a lot more this year.
More durable for sure.
Absolutely.
So I guess the first star I'd talk about from Poly is obviously the number 1 cornerback in the country, who's going to be facing off with Rosen on Friday night, Iman Biggie Marshall, who he played and he was great in that game in 2012. I mean, he's been good for the last 3 years, obviously, but this year he's, we always talk about, especially if you've been around Poly for a while, as JJ and I have covered them back to that 2008 championship. You always talk about like the playoffs are when you sort of make your status, really. We'll talk about that Melvin Richardson 2008 championship run forever, right?
Absolutely.
It's sort of just what happens. I think we saw that with Juju in 2012, and Biggie's kind of having that sort of a playoffs in so far this year, if they do go on and get a win on Friday. But he gave we found out after the game, he kicked the coaches out of the locker room at halftime of the Crespi game and gave a halftime speech. Then they come out and 31-6 in the second half. And even just as I'm doing research for these other features, I talked to Colin Samuel, who AP Coach Pierce over there told me, Samuel's he's huge. He's 6'3", 200-something pound cornerback. He's a Richard Sherman type. And AP said, well, he really started getting all these extra offers because people looked at him since the bye week. He's been so physical and nasty. And so I asked Samuel, where did that come from? Did you have a fight or something? Did someone break up with you? Where did you get that anger from? He said, well, no, that was the week that Biggie was hurt. And Biggie just worked with me the entire week. He was basically Colin Samuel's coach. And then now Colin Samuel is this nasty, aggressive, physical player. It's just sort of that you start to feel, similarly with Rosen, like this guy's influencing more than just what he does on the field. It's like his presence is having an effect on the program. And to be honest, my only complaint about this game, I wish we got it in the championship. Because both of these teams, you look at them, they both deserve to get to that level. They're both excellent teams. They've got All-Americans. They've got great coaches. And my personal feeling is whoever wins the game will go on and win the championship, in my opinion, over either Corona Centennial or Bishop Amat. But yeah, it's interesting.
Well, speaking of guys who have made their names in the playoffs, Sean McGrew did that last year, and I'm going to take a stab in the dark, as that's your next star for the Braves, right, Chris?
I'm checking my list, and yes, it is. Sean McGrew is my second star of the game, also in the backfield back there with Rosen. I mean, 24 touchdowns this year. That ties the school record set in 1968. I mean, you would have assumed he did that last year with all the times he scored, which is a little surprising. But
it's hard to keep scoring when you don't play in the second half of any game, including CIF semifinals. You know what I mean?
That is very true. These first 2 playoff games, they've been blowouts, 98-7, outscoring opponents. McGrew hasn't really been called upon. He's had 3 touchdowns, but they've just been short little punch-him-in scores very early in the game. And he hasn't really had a signature playoff game at this point. He's just been short runs. He doesn't look to himself. He looks like he's not running as hard as he has been. They're definitely going to need that. But he is, a guy that makes plays. He's just a guy for them. And I know, like you were talking about, Polly has all the respect for that kid out there.
When you talk to Coach Pierce, I think McGrew actually is maybe the player they're most worried about. I think they feel they've obviously got a ton of respect for Rosen, but I think there's a feeling that with the Division I defensive backs they've got, and they've got a whole defensive backfield full of them, that they match up better against Rosen and that receiving core than they do against McGrew. Polly does not almost ever go into a game where there's a guy on the other team that they can't catch from behind. Polly's team speed is essentially almost always better than the team they're playing, but McGrew is the fastest football player in California right now. So I think there's certainly probably a little more awareness of Sean McGrew and a little bit more concern with him than there probably is with Rosen, which brings me to my second person that I'd point to, which is James Brooks, a guy who's not necessarily, you look at more of a Joseph Wicker or, other big names on that defense as guys you think of as stars, but Brooks has been playing running back and linebacker and has really been excelling at both. I mean, I don't think they would have beaten Servite or Crespi without the way he played at linebacker. And then in both of those games, he also had a 75-yard plus touchdown run
at the biggest times.
At the biggest times, exactly. That kind of really put them in the driver's seat in those games. So I think that's a matchup to look at, but it does sort of speak to where you're talking about the expectations are rightfully higher than Bosco, because their guy back there is, he's a state finalist in the 100. He's heavily recruited. And Poly is going to have to rely on some guys like James Brooks that don't have the scholarship offers, that aren't big names yet. So I think that's something to definitely look at. And it's interesting because that's not usually the situation you'd see Poly in. They're usually the team that's got the guy, the Willie McGinnis or the Juju Smith.
You went linebacker, running back, a split guy. I'll go one who was one last year, and it's just a linebacker this year, Nas Anesi. He has the distinction of being the only returning starter from that incredible defense last year for Bosco. So the questions around them were, how are they going to be? He's not. They don't have really a big name like they had with Jalil Wadu, Chandler Lanu, Malik Dorton. They don't have those guys anymore. They're still young. They're still growing. But Nas is just kind of that calming factor in the middle. He doesn't make mistakes. He's always consistent. You have to be mistake-free when you're playing a Poly offense like this that has been very dangerous this far this season.
Yeah, and Nas was in that game, that semifinal that we were talking about. He got some real good PT as a sophomore, so even as a senior leader to the next level, to be able to say, I was standing on that sideline, and I do not want to feel like that again tonight.
Right. Yeah. Absolutely. And I think that's what's interesting to me is that sort of history in this game, because there's not a lot of guys who played in that 2012 game, but at least at Poly, those are the guys who are talking. And it was the same thing. Actually, Poly's probably talked more about their semifinal loss to Mater Dei than they did about beating Bosco. You don't hear too much about the 2012 game. You hear a lot about hey, we lost 30-0 to Mater Dei last year in the semifinals. Remember what that felt like. Is that what you want to feel like on Friday? Biggest difference, of course, between that Poly team and this Poly team, hard to imagine this Poly team not scoring points in any game against any opponent. And a lot of that is because of their quarterback. Could be the third guy I'll bring up. Josh Love has thrown 39 touchdowns and just 3 interceptions so far this season. He's absolutely been lighting it up. He's been perfect for their offense. And they're going to look to him because I really think he's going to make it go. I think that the Poly defense Bosco offense matchup is obviously strength v strength in some ways, but how much can Poly's offense take back from the Bosco defense that, as you mentioned, they did graduate their guys. Offense still has Rosen and McGrew. The defense is the side that lost some. So I think that's where I'm actually most curious to see how the game goes when those units are on the field, and to see what Love can do, because this is a different Bosco front than they've really seen, both on the offensive and defensive line. And that's obviously, as every game, JJ, we talk about, the game will be decided, I think, to a large extent in the trenches, but obviously want to talk about the quarterback. So.
Oh, yeah, of course. That's what everybody wants to do when they're on the mic. So we don't make predictions on this show. It's not something we do for high school sports very often, if ever, and we're not going to do it right now. But with how many times we've seen these teams play, you see the same plays again and again and again. Think of one play that Poly or Bosco or both run a lot that you think is going to really have something to say about the final result at Cerritos College on Friday night.
That's interesting. I probably, actually just from what I've seen over the years, a really boring answer, I'm sorry, but I'd probably say like the extra point. You
took my answer. I was going to say special teams.
Right, but it is. I think that's something where you've seen Poly hasn't had a home run or if you're looking at life as a Wheel of Fortune wheel, as we all do. Okay, they haven't hit the $1 million jackpot on special teams yet, and they haven't hit bankrupt either. And oftentimes that section can really swing the game. They haven't yet had, as they had in the state championship, a missed field goal that really hurt them, or a big return in a close game that put the game over the top. So I'm kind of curious.
Did they play a playoff game in 2008 where they didn't block a punt?
No. Right, that's exactly it, because traditionally that's always kind of been the edge for Poly, but really the last couple of years they sort of ceded special teams. They weren't getting any advantage there. They've been a lot better this season, but like I said, you haven't really seen it break a game open or cost them a game. And to me, you and I have watched enough Poly football, you just feel like if it hasn't happened,
that's why our answer was the same,
right,
Mike.
it's gonna happen one direction or another in this game.
Chris?
In that spread offense, it's built around those quick passes, and the ones they do the most is right there out in the flat. You have a wide receiver blocking, just trying to spring them loose.
Right.
And I think against a secondary like Poly's, which they think is the best one they have played this season, I think that's going to be really hard to do, and I'm interested how they're going to add some wrinkles to try to pick up some yards against, guys like Biggie and Samuel out there.
Right. Yeah, it's going to be interesting. I mean, you really, in my opinion, you really feel like Bosco is going to have to run the ball well. And I think if you look at their line, you'd sort of go, well, how would they not be able to run the ball well? But yeah, I mean, I'm curious to see, because if they're breaking the bubble screens, I think it's going to be a long night for Poly. But you would expect Poly to be able to get over on those plays. It's just the 30th time Sean McGrew runs the ball, how fresh is Poly to still be able to try and get in front of that huge offensive line and slow him down?
We are going to have the full squad at Cerritos College on Friday night. Both Mike and Chris are going to be there. You know what we do. We give you the article and the breakdown, and we'll have the video highlights for you late Friday night, early Saturday morning.
It'll probably be pretty late, because I'm guessing it's going to be a long highlight.
It's going to be a long night, but it's going to be a fun one, too.
It'll probably be 3 minutes long before we even get to the game starting, I'm guessing.
I mean, yeah, get there early. Some of the best pomp and circumstance you will find is CIF Pac-5 Division football. From the Nina to the Pinta, and then we'll hit the Santa Maria a little bit later. But another chance to go to a ship for the Downey Vikings. Second in 3 years for Jack Williams' team. And they are going to be taking on Salesian, who are the upstart Cinderella team of this Southeast
They've got glass cleats on out there, man.
Division.
They've been unbelievable. At this point, the Minnesota Vikings would rather be fans of the Downey Vikings, JJ. There's such incredible playoff success over the last 3 years.
You heard me hesitate right there. It's because Mike's eyes lit up so big when he thought of that joke. So, Chris, obviously the Vikings leaning heavily on their running back duo. And why not? Because they're pretty gosh darn good.
Yeah, you can make the case those are the two best running backs in the Southeast Division. You have Justin Huff, who's always dangerous, led them to that first CIF title with over 2,000 yards rushing, and he's got a backmate now in Day Vigilant.
The Vigilant one.
6 straight games over 100 yards. He's just been clutch, as Jack Williams said.
He's averaging 135 yards a game is Day. And you know we love to say we told you so. And after the first round of football playoffs, I am going to take this opportunity. Remember that Milliken Downey game? I just fell in love with the Downey running attack. I think I talked about it for 2 weeks after that on this show.
True.
Sure enough, correct. Running the ball gets you into the semifinals.
Eye in the sky don't lie. He really was about that team. And yeah, Downey making a nice little run. Interesting quick note on Salesian. Salesian used to be in St. Anthony's division, so we always see they were actually league mates with St. Anthony, and they're kind of the bully of that level. They got moved up, and clearly that was the right decision because they surprised La Mirada, and now here they find themselves in a semifinal.
They've got to be surprising themselves at this point. We're talking about a 6-6 football team, like Mike said, that moved up divisions. I mean, they've not even scored 300 points yet this year, and they've allowed over 300. How many football semifinalists right now have given up more points than they've scored.
1.
I'll wait. Yeah, it's not a lot. And you know, it's funny. Downey really luckily won this coin flip so that they can come home and play this game at home because they do not want to go to Salesian. I've been to Salesian. It is a rose amongst the thorns out there in LA, and it is a tight, confined space that can really get rocking. So hopefully Downey can use that home momentum to go against this Salesian Mustangs team that really, if you shake their confidence early, I know we always talk about Cinderellas and how a hot team in the playoffs is the most dangerous, but if they come to Downey and Downey takes a lead and that place is loud, I mean, you could see this thing getting out of control because if they let the Mustangs hang around, the Vikings could be in trouble.
Absolutely. We know Downey can pack a stadium, and especially for that defense, I just want to shout them out. They've been playing really well. They thought that this defense was more athletic and talented than the one that won 2 years ago, and they're proving it right now. So you got a great defense, got a great pair of running backs. What else do you need in the playoffs?
Our coverage, you'll find it all over the Press Telegram. The scores in the Pac-5 division have been ridiculous. If you look at that bracket, it looks like they might be playing girls basketball. The same can be said for this semifinal matchup in the East Valley division. We've got St. Anthony and Grace Brethren. These two teams have put up over 40 points in all 4 of their playoff victories this year. They've both got high-powered offenses. The undefeated Lancers from Simi Valley have scored 532 points this season, and they run that veer quick hitting with junior running back Shaquille Reddick, who's gonna go over 2,000 yards in this semifinal game if he picks up 60. He's scored 24 times in 12 games, and yeah, the Saints defense, which is very good, and you can read about in the Gazette this week and also in the Press Telegram on Friday, but they will have their hands full with this veer because it's going to come at them, and it's going to come at them fast, and they got to be ready for it.
Enjoy filming that, JJ. I had a great time filming the Crespi veer last week. I just stood behind the line of scrimmage, man. It's just miserable. I hate it. I would hate to have to defend it. I hate to have to film it. I hate having to write about it. It's just, I get it. I appreciate the football history, but I like St. Anthony offense. I like get the ball out there, let your playmakers do their thing, not this, I don't know. It's just not my style.
I said big plays would decide that quarterfinal game at Vasquez. I'm going to say the same thing here because I was right. Big plays decided that quarterfinal game at Vasquez. Jake Hooper coming up with 2 huge 4th down touchdown throws that pretty much put that game to bed. And you can look at a team like Grace Brethren that has really not played a defense like St. Anthony. So maybe that defense can come up with a big play, or special teams with Roderick Ashford and Jalen Watson back there for those Saints. First semifinal for the Saints since 1948. Obviously, we've said before, the first time they've even won league in like 15 years. So new territory for St. Anthony High School and their football program. So they are very excited over there. If they do get a win here, they would host a CIF championship next weekend.
What on earth have we come to with St. Anthony? How exciting is this, legitimately? Because you and I mean, we were aware. I did the research for that football book, and we were like really poring over this stuff. The 1948 St. Anthony CIF Championship, which they have painted on the wall out there at Clark Field. But that's so long ago. I mean, you know what I mean? It's really distant history, and so to see them go on this run now, it's legitimately incredibly exciting. And I don't know, I can't say more than that, but it's like if they can stop this veer, they're going back for the first time since 3 years after World War II ended.
Crazy. Big ups to Mario Morales, head coach over there, and his entire coaching staff who have really turned that program around. That game is going to be at Moore Park College, so obviously a long drive for Saints fans. If you are at one of those other semifinals, of course, you can follow the live score updates at PT Gazette Sports. That's it. That's all. There ain't no more. Another episode of Long Beach Sports Talk is in the books. We are guaranteed to go to a ship, but we want to cover 3 of them. Why the heck not? Good luck to all the football players this week. Like I said before, you can follow all of our coverage via social media on the night and then get to those websites on Saturday morning for all the recaps you could possibly handle. Thank you to everyone at the Press Telegram and the Grunion Gazette and GazetteSports.com for helping us put everything out, including this show. Thanks to Mike and Tyler, even though he's not here.
Yeah.
And Chris and Vinny and Shar. And JJ.
Thanks to you, JJ. I'm thankful for even your weird, self-referential third-person things, because it's Thanksgiving, and that's why I'm in a grateful mood, that's all.
We are always in a grateful mood because we have one of the best jobs on the planet. Thanks, Long Beach. We'll see you guys in the stands this weekend. Happy Turkey Day. Sorry.
That was dumb.